Dear listeners, today's story was sent to us by a subscriber, and he wanted us to have this story narrated on this channel. While creating this piece, we realized that this is a bit NSFW. It's a story, not of a cheating wife or a husband, but it's a story of a doormat simp. Let's start with it. I'm sharing my experience here, and it's been quite a journey. My fiancée and I were happily together for 4 years until she expressed interest in exploring a polyamorous lifestyle. She's bisexual and hadn't had much experience with girls, so the idea of getting a girlfriend of her own intrigued her. Initially, she felt guilty about it, but I encouraged her. At that point, I thought it wouldn't be an issue as long as things between us didn't change. I even dismissed the idea that being with a bisexual person could lead to complications because they might always wonder about the other side. However, looking back, maybe I should have paid more attention to the warning signs. She already had people lined up, and although she wanted to explore, she made it clear she had no interest in sharing me. This seemed a bit one-sided, but I ignored the red flag. As time went on, she felt relieved after our conversation about potentially having a girlfriend. After I graduated college early, she was left alone on campus, and with my blessing, things took a turn. We tried phone sex since I couldn't visit, but that led to its own set of challenges. She was left pinned up, and that marked the beginning of her exploring others. We established some rules for our open relationship, rules she likely wrote herself. The agreement was to have equal rights, communicate about any potential encounters or new interests, and always use condoms since she refused birth control. We set some ground rules in our open relationship. We're each other's top priority, and we have the power to veto specific individuals. Threesomes were on the table, with certain guidelines for sexual acts. These rules were well understood, followed, and tweaked as we gained more experience. The narration often uses we, though, to be honest, my experiences were somewhat limited compared to hers. The story unfolds with her connecting with someone about an hour away from college. They chatted and had phone sex until she felt comfortable meeting him. I remember feeling a mix of nerves, anxiety, worry, and oddly, excitement. However, there's a jab at my emotions, suggesting I might be into something like cuckolding, which raises questions about my own comfort level. Just a backstory before we go ahead, she loves anal and we had one successful experience and she was all about any hole whenever you want. Here's the catch. She's lactose intolerant but addicted to cheese and ice cream. So, I got a bit worried to go to the back door when she had ice cream. I found myself in a situation where promises, more such acts and playful gestures about engaging in particular activities didn't quite materialize as expected. She would gasp and tease me about it, creating anticipation. The catch was she needed practice to feel comfortable with it, but despite repeated promises, she never attempted using lactose intolerance pills or cutting back on dairy. As time went on, the frustration grew because even when she claimed to be ready down there, she'd be too tight, perhaps due to nervousness or excessive eagerness. This cycle went on for years, and eventually, I gave up, feeling both frustrated and led on without any resolution. Fast forward to the present with this first guy, and he drops a bombshell. I want to make your ass gape. It's the same day I suggested trying a new toy for anal or filming a video, something that had been part of our normal routine. However, she immediately shuts down the idea, stating, "It's a bad anal day, sorry." It seems like her consistent response of "it's a bad anal day, sorry" is becoming a pattern. However, when this specific guy texts her with the desire to make her ass gape, she immediately engages in anal play. This inconsistency raises questions about her communication and honesty regarding her comfort levels and desires. If this behavior repeats with other guys she meets, it adds another layer of complexity to the situation and could be a source of frustration and confusion in the relationship. Addressing these communication issues and establishing clear boundaries may be crucial for the well-being of the relationship. It's disheartening to learn that this guy she just met convinced her to wear a butt plug, something she had never practiced for me, even after attempting to give up dairy for a day. The fact that she went to such lengths for him, including a 67-minute drive, raises questions about her priorities and willingness to explore certain activities within our relationship. Surprisingly, this guy turned out to be a catfish, only interested in leading her on for phone sex. This revelation understandably caused her distress, leading her to consider ending all attempts at a polyamorous arrangement. I managed to convince her not to let one guy's bad behavior discourage her from pursuing her goals, especially considering it was her first attempt. The next guy turned out to be pretty chill, and she even gave him a blowjob the first time they met up. However, she didn't like the experience, feeling used and disappointed. To top it off, he never replied after that encounter, leaving her feeling even more disheartened. She had a fair share of meetups that revolved around oral activities, and she started enjoying the newfound freedom that came with our polyamorous arrangement. Then, she stumbled upon this guy who seemed genuinely laid back and considerate of her pleasure. Feeling comfortable with him, she gave the green light for things to go all the way, and he turned out to be the first person, aside from me, who managed to make her climax that day. After a series of unsuccessful attempts with other partners over the course of about 2 months, I found myself with zero action. After several failed attempts with other partners for what felt like an eternity and zero action for me, we turned to Reddit, specifically our fora groups, hoping to find a solution. However, a new issue surfaced. It seemed like I no longer existed. When I, as a guy, made a post for fun, I'd be lucky to get one reply, if any. In stark contrast, girls received hundreds of responses, and she thoroughly enjoyed the attention, validation, and the process of finding new people. Naturally, she began prioritizing the guys who kept her attention, and my messages were met with minimal responses, maybe just an LOL, left undelivered, or left unread. We had each other's Reddit accounts for transparency, so Lily got all the notifications, making it clear that she was actively texting others. This is where the seeds of jealousy started to sprout. While all this was unfolding, she was still in touch with a guy from the early stages, who seemed cool but also quite flaky. The way she laughed with him, engaged in one-on-one talks, or interrupted our conversations to text him was getting on my nerves. It became increasingly irritating to witness her diverting attention and seemingly prioritizing this individual over our own interactions. She genuinely liked him, and it was evident that the novelty and excitement of this new connection had captured her attention. As much as it bothered me, I understood the allure of fresh and thrilling experiences and relationships. I could understand her attraction to him and the allure of new experiences, but my understanding took a hit when he disappeared for a week, only to come back with a nonchalant, "Sorry, I've been on Elden Ring nonstop. Beat it twice this week already, LOL." What started as a seemingly harmless gaming obsession turned into a full-on lash out at me for the smallest mistakes. For instance, I was driving and missed a turn after she told me to make a right. It should have been a simple fix, right? But no, she started yelling at me and got extremely upset. The ironic part was that I loved Elden Ring too, but because he constantly blew her off to play it for days, she despised me even mentioning it. The dynamics were becoming increasingly challenging and frustrating. Now, she's barely texting unless she needs something, like emotional support during an event. Additionally, she's lashing out at me. After 3 months of navigating this polyamorous journey, I finally discovered some semblance of balance in my life and decided to post for fun and friendship. I connected with this amazing girl, and after some texting, we hit it off. The plan for a Batman movie date turned out great. Meanwhile, my fiancé's communication improved for a while, but as soon as she got back into the seeking mindset, it felt like I didn't exist again. I brought it up, and she apologized, but the same pattern repeated. Due to my schedule and an accident, I couldn't see the new girl for months, but we stayed in touch. Interestingly, my fiancée decided to pause her meetups to focus on me, especially since I had a near-death experience. While I was in the hospital, I unloaded all my feelings on her, and she genuinely felt bad about it. This new girl, I could tell, was genuinely remorseful. She paused for a bit, even refraining from meeting up with someone for a while, although she did make a permissive attempt with a flaky man. Unsurprisingly, he didn't show up, never replied, or even opened her messages. It's almost like these two boneheads were made for each other. I tried consoling her, expressing my weariness with him making her cry. I strongly urged her to stop seeing him because, at this point, it had been 5 months of them talking, and he had become a constant source of disappointment. She was feeling gutted over the near-death incident, and to distract herself, she resumed meeting up with people and engaging in occasional intimate activities with others. The whole situation was becoming emotionally draining for both of us. The texting issues returned once again, and we found ourselves working at the same job. I had made it clear that I wasn't comfortable with any intimate involvement with my coworkers, especially since she had said the same when I jokingly asked months prior. However, it turned out that she had engaged in intimate activities with another coworker, and I overlooked it. In the early stages of our poly journey, she made a rule that we wouldn't engage with people under 20 years old, considering we were in our early 20s. However, it seems that she ended up being involved with lots of 19-year-olds, with the promise of no more turning into a repeated pattern. Then, when another girl replied to me, who happened to be 18, I proved that she was legal and seemed cool. Despite that, my fiancé said no, and I complied with her decision. I found a 40-year-old married woman, which, I admit, is pretty unethical. Yeah, I get it. It's not the right thing to do. But hey, if she's already cheating, might as well be someone else, right? My fiancée wasn't too thrilled about me contributing to being a homewrecker. She gave me the whole, "I'm telling you how I feel, but do what you want" kind of response. When I tried explaining why I didn't care that she's married, the response was more the same. After weeks of planning, I decided to end it because, well, if you say no, and I go ahead with it, you might end up doing the same in the future. Another layer of concern emerged regarding her engaging in activities with others that she seemed hesitant or unwilling to do with me. I always had these desires to try new things with her, like getting a bit messy or elaborate experiences, and I'd express it, but she'd often get shy or hesitant. I had this ongoing wish to try some car fun, but whenever I brought it up, she'd either change her mind, say no, or initially agree only to change her mind later. Interestingly, all those things, including a lot of intimate encounters, ended up happening in her car, just not with me. Trying to get her to consider certain things felt like a constant battle, and it seemed like he probably faced similar challenges. She shared feeling ugly and self-conscious despite my constant reassurances about her beauty and Lily always attending to her needs. Yet, when other guys demanded certain things, she was more willing. I tried expressing how this made me feel on multiple occasions, highlighting my expectations of exploring things we discussed since we first met. Her response essentially boiled down to it being easier with them because they don't really know me. While I could understand the dynamics, it became apparent that my expectations might not be met. To add to the complexity, we hadn't even had phone sex since the beginning, and I didn't even care about it anymore. But when I mentioned that any time I asked her for it, she'd reject or something would come up, she seemed surprised, despite knowing that pattern by now. The situation is becoming increasingly complex and challenging, especially considering her willingness to engage in certain activities with others when she's in the mood. Now, getting to the heart of why I decided to write this, she had taken a medical leave and was finishing her last semester this past August. After I dropped her off, I finally felt liberated and could move freely post the accident. This newfound freedom allowed me to reconnect with the girl I had been speaking to for about 6 months. By this point, it had been about 8 months into our poly journey, and she, too, had found some guys upstate. We were cool, and I had my fun, experiencing intimacy with someone else for the first time. Our time together was great, and I felt surprisingly comfortable with her. We both expressed that comfort. When I shared this experience with my fiancée, she seemed cool with it. However, a week or two later, when my fiancée received some bad news and called me, I stepped away from our meetup because she needed my support. It felt bad since I never interrupted her before, but I prioritized being there for her in that moment. I consoled her during our call, and before we hung up, she suggested texting since I had my smartwatch on, and it would notify me. She refused to call due to discomfort. So, I continued with my friends with benefits, periodically checking my watch just in case she texted me before calling. I was specifically looking for new messages. I received one about her spiraling and needing me again, but I didn't feel my watch vibrate. It turned out to be a mistaken notification from a prior call to her. I only replied after leaving, just to buy, as per our rules of saying I was leaving. However, she was extremely offended, feeling that I was ignoring her and didn't care about her in her time of need. I was thoroughly confused as I didn't realize those messages were post-phone call until she expressed her anger. Once I grasped the situation, I admitted my mistake, felt genuinely sorry, and we moved on. Fast forward a few weeks, and I find myself seeing the Batman girl again. My fiancé is bothered by how frequently I'm seeing her, feeling a twinge of jealousy. The perception is that this other girl can give me everything my fiancé can, especially since she's stuck upstate, unable to be physically present. Unfortunately, I couldn't visit my fiancé due to financial constraints and her hectic schedule, so I started seeing her less. I spent 6 hours with my friends with benefits and didn't text my fiancé until I left. To my surprise, she was upset and felt neglected, even though we had never discussed the need for texting during long stretches, except when changing locations. It was confusing why she made such a big deal out of it. Nonetheless, I apologized and assured her I would do better, which I did. Last week, I saw her again, and I was falling asleep at her place. My mom had already given her permission to stay out, so all I needed to do was update my fiancé. However, she recently officially moved upstate and was feeling lonely, so she invited a guy. She usually joked that Essex intimacy wasn't on the table, but suddenly it happened, and we engaged in intimate activities, which led to my curiosity about how it went. I texted her saying, "So, I'm spending the night LOL." She replied with a casual, "Oh, okay, have fun," and I immediately fell asleep, being literally half asleep at this point. The next day, she was livid, expressing a desire for me to stop seeing my friends with benefits altogether. She claimed that I don't care about her and that she's not a priority. I didn't think it was a big deal, but she hated that I told her about it by joking. I explained how I didn't think it would be an issue, but she said, "Anytime you think that's an issue," and that got me very upset. It's quite a shift. She was all for this, and suddenly she's talking about being close to enacting the veto rule. I really like this girl, and we've been getting along really well since the day we met. We both genuinely like each other and want to be together. The changing dynamics and the potential threat of a veto rule add another layer of complexity to our polyamorous journey. Now, I feel like if I pursue a more serious relationship with her, it'll be the equivalent of building a house with no foundation. I see these three issues, and they don't seem that deep or insurmountable. They appear easily fixable, just like the situation with the sleepover. Okay, I'll communicate more frequently. I get it. I expressed my understanding and willingness to adapt, but I'm starting to question the reciprocity. I took a moment to think about her side of things, but it struck me. What about me? She's had all these experiences with other guys, treating me in ways that I've only recently discovered. Yet, it feels like whatever I did or didn't do is automatically deemed bad. It's making me question if maybe it's time for her to go. I don't get it. It frustrates me. After everything this past year, you want to do that? We spoke about it, and I tried to address some of her concerns, but that doesn't clear any of mine. Where's the concern for my side of things? Why say you're okay with all this if you're just going to get jealous? It all feels so unstable. She says she feels I don't care and I'm too complacent by being okay with a lot. How the heck does that make sense, though? It's confusing, and I'm struggling to understand where she's coming from. It's frustrating because there was seemingly no issue when things were going well for me, but now that they are, it's become a problem. I don't get it. Then, suddenly, there's an issue with me not having a problem. It doesn't make sense, and now I feel like the moment I say X instead of Y, she feels offended and hurt because I should have thought about it to be okay. This inconsistency in reactions and the feeling that every move is met with offense and hurt is causing me to second-guess this situation. This is as far as the OP is updated, and we will try to get the latest update once it is there. The OP here is a cuck and a doormat for his partner and deserves the humiliation that he is going through. What do you think? Please share in the comments section.
Dear listener, if you have reached this far, please click on the subscribe button. It will be a great help.